Alright, so this video is meant as an addendum to this video that I'll link above, where I talk about the methods I use to find fish during the off season. So actually you look online and find info about that. So one of the big tools I talked about was Minnesota Department of Natural Resources Lake Finder in their fisheries survey. So this point of this video is basically just to explain the methods they use to sample fish a little bit more. All right, so got my screen here. So what you see under fish sampled is three different gear types that they use: standard trap nets, standard gill nets, and standard electrofishing. So I just want to explain those and also what all of these numbers mean here, and show you that so that you know what numbers to look at for these things. Okay, so trap nets. First off, a trap net is a net that they put in shallow water. So it has this lead line that goes up to shore, so it would be pinned on shore up here, and then this line goes perpendicular to shore out to this conical trap, kind of like a large bee trap. So they drop this net in the water, and then fish come along the shore, run into this net, and then go into the trap. So this samples shore fish that hang out along shore quite well. So bluegills, for instance, are sampled real well by this. What it doesn't sample real well is fish species that are in open water. So what they use there is gill nets. So a gill net is basically a monofilament net. So it looks like this, with holes in it that they leave out in open water. They often come further up to the surface than this. And then the fish swims into this net and gets stuck by its gills, like you see here. So they swim in and then they can't swim out because of their gill plates. And so this samples open water fish like walleye, like pike, like the trouts, whitefish, etc. really well. Doesn't sample shore fish species like, say, panfish as well. And then interestingly, largemouth bass and smallmouth bass, for that matter, are not sampled very well by either of these techniques. So they use another method, night electrofishing. They call it standard electrofishing here. So if you're not familiar with electrofishing, basically you have a boat, the generator, electrodes that put a current into the water, stuns the fish temporarily. People net those, and then you can count and so forth. And so the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources found out that the best way to do that, or to sample bass, is night electrofishing, like these guys are doing. So that's what you'll see these numbers here. So you can see that here, the gill nets only caught 4 bass, 14 were caught in gill nets, and 138 were caught in the nighttime electrofishing. So that's pretty much what you'd expect. You'll also see, again, bluegill, similar species that will be caught in near shore in trap nets. You see a bunch in the trap nets, a few in the gill nets. And then you go way down to walleye, which are an open water fish. You see only 1 in the trap nets and a bunch in the gill nets. So when you're looking at these, you want to look at the right gear. So you see 1 walleye in a trap net, that's not really a bad thing. You see 1 walleye in gill nets, that's a bad thing. Same with, again, bluegill. You see very few in the trap nets. There's probably not a lot there. Largemouth, you don't necessarily expect to see a bunch in the trap nets or the gill nets. You want to see them in the electrofishing. Okay, so now for the actual numbers. So the number over here is count, so that's just how many fish they caught of that species. That's not real important because it's not standardized. So the DNR has a certain number of nets or certain amount of electrofishing time for each acre of the lake. So different lakes will have different numbers of that, so the count isn't very important. That's the overall count, not standardized to lake. So that's the point of this CPUE statistic. CPUE stands for catch per unit effort, and so that's standardized per net. So in as far as trap nets, that's number of fish caught per net night, they call it. So that the nets, whether both trap nets and gill nets, will be set out. So you set a net, say at noon on Monday, and then you come back at noon on Tuesday, you pull that net. That's 1 net night. Say you deploy 20 nets, that'll be 20 net nights is the unit. So you get 20 fish divided by 20 net nights, that's a CPUE of 1. Electrofishing, I believe their units are minutes, so how many fish are caught per minute. All right, so then you have the normal range, so that's just the catch per unit effort for similar lakes. So you want to look at that, and so you look at, say, black crappie, they had 7.38, normal range is 0.2 to 1.1, so there's a lot of crappie in this lake. Then you look at the average weight, so that's just pounds. 1.7 is the average weight for black crappie. Not very big crappie, as you can see by the normal range here. And you can see this for other things. So like pike, for instance, again, pelagic open water species. So you want to look at gill nets. So they caught 13.75, which is significantly higher than the normal range. The weight is on the upper end of the normal range. 2.6 pound pike is not a bad pike. So that's the meaning of these. Again, all this will be summarized in the status of the fishery. So I would read that before looking at the actual data. And again, you look at what they talk about here, and you see, let's see, for walleye, so they talk about gill net catch per unit effort for walleye. Again, open water species. Northern pike, they talk about gill net catch. For largemouth bass, they have nighttime boat electrofishing, and bluegill, they talk about trap netting. So obviously the DNR personnel writing these knows what they're talking about, and they will summarize the appropriate statistics. So I would look to this status of the fishery summary before looking at the numbers. But this gives you a basic overview of those numbers, so you know what you're looking at. And you can look at these numbers and decide whether it's good fishing lake, bad fishing lake. As I said in the other video, I would not put too much emphasis on that they didn't catch a really big fish for a particular lake. These surveys are meant to be representative, and really big fish are rare. That's the whole point of catching them. And so you wouldn't expect them to be represented in these samples that the DNR catches. So just because they didn't catch an 8-pound bass doesn't mean there isn't an 8-pound bass in there. It just means that fish is rare. So you really want to look at it for the numbers. You really want to look at it for the average, not necessarily for the really big fish, the outliers. Okay, so hope you enjoyed this video explaining the DNR sampling methods a little bit. If you haven't seen it already, check out the main video. I'll link that above again. And if you like this video, hit the like, comment if you have any comments or questions about this, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. See you on the water.